If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. The Truth in My Days podcast is sponsored by the Truth in My Days ministry. Welcome to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hello all. Just as a reminder, this is part 2 of a multi-part series. Today, we have Sonia interviewing John. We have been looking at the question of the age of the earth. All of the Western world used to believe, based on the Bible, that the earth was about 6,000 years old. But with the rise of the Enlightenment and the theory of evolution, we are now told the earth is some 4.6 billion years old. If the Bible does teach the earth is about 6,000 years old, then the Bible and the claims of secular science are in opposition of each other, which makes the age of the earth a very important question. We begin to see first whether the Bible does in fact teach the earth is about 6,000 years old. We saw that there is sufficient chronological data given in God-breathed scripture to justify this young age. We are looking at the chronology at this moment. Now we continue the discussion.
So, beget refers to all descendants that come, not just the immediate sons. And all male in the lineal descent are called sons. We don't do that in English, but they do that in Hebrew. We see a very clear example of that in Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, the very beginning of the New Testament, that starts with the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Well, we know Jesus Christ was not the immediate son of David. David had sons, and that was about 1,000 years before Jesus, but Jesus is still the son of David. And there was a long time period between David and Abraham, about 1,000 years there as well, and yet David is called the son of Abraham. Then in the next 16 verses of Matthew, they give a more complete genealogy of Jesus, much more complete than what you have in verse 1. But even this genealogy is omitting some of the names. And again, that's completely acceptable because any lineal descendant is begotten and is a son.
Well, but then that doesn't mean that we can just simply add up the numbers, can we? I heard of apologists making this claim.
The numbers and the genealogies in Genesis 5 and 11, yes, they do make that claim. It doesn't really help them, though, even if that were true, because to fit billions of years into the biblical account, to say that the earth is billions of years old, what they need is long periods of time before Adam, not after him. So trying to put in time gaps into the genealogies, inserting some more time there, is not going to give you the billions of years that you need to try to reconcile the Bible with the supposed ages shown by secular science. But they're wrong about not adding up the dates, because what we have in Genesis 5 and Genesis 11 are what are called chronogenealogies. As we saw, they include the ages at the birth of each person in the list. We see again, if we look at Genesis 5, for example, Abraham begot Seth, and then Seth, it says, Abraham lived 130 years and begot a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. It says Seth lived 105 years and begot Enoch. Enoch lived 90 years and begot Cainan. Cainan lived 70 years and begot Mahalalel. What you see here is a gap of time between each pair of names in the genealogy.
So it doesn't really matter if the next person is the immediate son or not, because you still can add up the ages.
Exactly. If you go to Arphaxad, for example, Arphaxad begot Salah. We read that, and we know there is one name omitted in that list, because we know there's this Cainan in Luke 3:36. But we have the absolute period of time. So if, for example, Yared was 162 years old when he begot Enoch, then we know that the gap of time between the birth of Yared and Enoch is 162 years. It doesn't matter if there were some generations in between that. We still know that the time period from Yared to Enoch is 162 years. So the idea that there are some names missing is possible, but it's irrelevant. The times are still additive. So these chronogenealogies do cover 1,056 years from creation to Noah. And we add in those other numbers that we looked at from the time lifespans given for Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and the time in Egypt, and then from the Exodus to Solomon's 4th year, and then all of the regnal periods to the captivity in Babylon, then yes, we know that this list anyway gives us the age of the earth at 6,067 years. And so yes, the Bible does tell us how old the world is. I'm not sure why there are apologists who say the Bible doesn't tell us this. True, it doesn't tell us in Genesis 1, but it does tell us.
Okay, so 6,067 years, but you just said that the earth is a maximum of 7,687 years old. So where did the extra years come from?
When we add up the chronological data that I've gone through, there are some uncertainties. Going back to the genealogies, for example, when it says Yared was 62 years old and begot Enoch. Well, was that 62 years and 1 day or 62 years and 360 days? There's difference. Numbers like that across the long genealogy could add up and give you a number of extra years. So this is one example, but there are other uncertainties as well.
Please note that this is a multi-part series. If you have missed any episodes and would like to listen to them, they will all be available on our YouTube channel and on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. You can find the links to these on our website, truthinmydays.com, or you can look for Truth in My Days on YouTube as one word.
And an excellent examination of these uncertainties is done in a detailed article written by Chris Hardy and Robert Carter called The Biblical Minimum and Maximum Age of the Earth. You can find it on the Creation Ministries International website. And they go through all of the possible uncertainties and show that the Earth is a minimum possible 5,844 years old, and a maximum possible 7,687 years old. It's somewhere in between these two possible extremes. The number we came up with is right in the middle of that. But because of the uncertainties, we'll have to say that the maximum possible age is 7,687 years old.
Okay, I do wonder how they could have gotten 5,844, though, because even if somebody is closer to the end of, say, age, 62 or whatever, almost 63 years old, that would add up to extra years over a long period of time. But how could it get to so much less?
Well, there are other uncertainties as well. There is the 430 years in Egypt. And there's some question about what they call the long sojourn versus the short sojourn. Does that 430 years start from the time that God said this to Abraham, or does it start from the time that they were actually in Egypt? Was the sojourn 430 years, or was it 215? And there might be some textual issues. Do the numbers in the genealogies in the Masoretic Hebrew text might be different from the numbers in the Septuagint, the Greek text? So which one's correct? There are these various uncertainties, and you take the minimum possible on each of these uncertainties. The minimum possible would give you 5,844. If on every one of these uncertainties you take the maximum, you take for the sojourn, you take 430 instead of 215, you assume that every name in the genealogy is the number of years plus 360 days, not plus 1 day. That gives you the maximum. And so that's why you have that range.
So what is the relationship between the theory of evolution and the age of the Earth? I know there are apologists who deny evolution, but also hold that the Earth is billions of years old.
They are related, but they're not the same. In theory, it's possible to have a billions of years old Earth and still reject evolution, because the billions of years are a necessary condition for evolution, without those years, you cannot possibly have evolution. So they're necessary for the theory of evolution, but on its own, billions of years will not give you evolution. There are all kinds of other problems with that we've gone through in our other show. So in one sense, they're two separate things. And in fact, the secular scientists first began to attack the age of the Earth, the biblical view of the age of the Earth, before they moved on to the theory of evolution. This would go back to the very late 18th century and the early 19th century with men like James Hutton and Charles Lyell. What was happening in those days, you had the Industrial Revolution going in England that required vast amounts of coal to keep your factories going and your industrial machinery going, iron ore. Now, they dug up these things for a long time in England, and now they're exhausting the supplies near the surface. They were having to dig further and further. And as they dug deeper and deeper into the ground, they saw that the Earth seemed to be divided into layers. And Hutton and Lyell embraced an idea that they called uniformitarianism. Uniformitarianism is the idea that whatever processes you see operating in the world today must have been operating all along, and no other processes could have been operating. So they would say that, well, when you see sediments being laid down today, they're operating very, very slowly. They must always have been operating very slowly. So when you look at all of these layers, and they were all laid down very slowly, it must have taken millions and millions of years to do it, and later billions. The supposed age of the Earth kept going up to accommodate evolutionary theory. So this is what they said. Now, it was an assumption that they made, and it's not a valid one. You can't possibly get fossils, for example, if you depend on these really slow deposition rates, because to get a fossil, you have to bury your organism. And if it takes millions of years to bury the organism, it will rot away long before it can be buried. And there are other problems with uniformitarianism, so much so that scientists today don't hold to uniformitarianism in toto. They say that there must have been many catastrophic events in the past when these processes moved very much more quickly. And we would agree with catastrophism, the greatest of these obviously being the flood at the time of Noah. But this is what was happening in the very late 18th, early 19th century. This idea to embrace uniformitarianism to undermine what the Bible said about the age of the Earth. At this point, everybody in the Western world believed the Earth was about 6,000 years old. Lyell, for example, Charles Lyell, explicitly said that his goal in geology was to free science from Moses. In other words, he wanted to decouple it from the Bible. He was setting up so-called science against the Bible. And in 1 Timothy 6:20, we're actually warned about that. That was written 1,700 years before Lyell, and we're told not to be deceived by science falsely so-called. But this is what was happening. Science came up and presented itself as an opponent of the Bible. True science isn't. You see, what was here was not an actual scientific discovery. It was an assumption of uniformitarianism.
Did nobody know about fossils at that time?
Oh, I knew about fossils. They were digging up fossils around this time. But somehow they didn't make the connection between the two. Or look at, is this a problem for our ideas?
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part, same time and same place. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. If you like our content, please share this information with family and friends. It helps us a lot. We also would love to hear from you. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube by searching Truth in My Days as one word again. Truth in My Days as one word. No spaces in between. Or reach us by email at info@truthinmydays.com. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.